Welcome back to Network Africa. Kenya's coffee business is booming at a time when the commodity prices are low around the world. This is because Kenya's middle class is promoting the coffee culture as they spend more time and money in coffee bars like Pete's Cafe. Many of them are springing up across the capital, Nairobi.
Kenya produces close to 1 million bags of coffee annually. But even then, it is a relatively small coffee grower compared with other producers in the region like Uganda and Ethiopia. Its specialty, coffee, is highly sought after by roasters who blend it with coffees from other nations. At least 90% of Kenya's coffee is exported. Coffee exports were at one time Kenya's leading foreign exchange earner, but mismanagement in the sector, unpredictable weather, and falling world prices have hampered production of the cash crop over the years. Many small-scale farmers, disillusioned by poor earnings, cut down their bushes and turn to other crops or have sold land for real estate.
On a bottle of wine, you know, some of the vineyards aren't even that old, but they'll give you a story and they'll be like, this is the flavor that comes out of it. I would like to see more of that in a coffee packet. And to be honest, you get that outside of the country with our coffee. You know, like in the States, you might find a shop that sells Kenyan coffee and they'll be like, oh, this came from Karatina. It has been grown by this lady for 12 years. And But when we're consuming it here, we don't get that story. Or maybe we're more interested in Nescafe or, you know, something that it doesn't take as much effort to prepare. But slowly we're getting to that point where we're like, no, why is it so nice? Why do other people like it? Let's give it a shot. Let me see what it's like in my own house. You know?
Many African and international firms are excited about rising spending power on a continent that boasts several fast-growing economies, even if a commodity price slide has taken some of the shine off the Africa Rising theme.
Being one of the players in the food and beverage industry and talking and helping to sort of increase the food and drink culture, it's great for us. However, you've seen a change from, say, what we would call mom and pop shops, where family-run small restaurants, moving towards huge international franchises and, you know, big brands coming in from the rest of the world.
Industry experts say the proliferation of coffee culture means there is room for competition between local coffee house brands and big multinationals like Starbucks.
The reality is a lot of the people that are coming to these restaurants as well have been outside of the country. So they've been exposed to some of the best coffee shops around. So they have an awareness of these different, you know, offerings that they can get. So when they come home and, you know, Kenya, we actually make coffee, we grow coffee. Expectations have grown, they've raised.
Kenya's biggest coffee market is still firmly set abroad, and analysts say the growing consumption of the beverage locally is unlikely to shift demand. But with continued interest at home, coffee enthusiasts hope finer quality of the commodity will be more widely available locally, and Kenyans can have a higher appreciation for a taste of their own.
But when it's flushed,
Who doesn't love coffee? Now, ahead of the 20th anniversary of the execution of Ken Saro-Wiwa and 9 other Ogoni activists campaigning in the Niger Delta, an investigation by Amnesty International has found out that areas hit by spills remain contaminated years after Shell claimed to have successfully cleaned them up. There are hundreds of spills every year which affect the health and livelihood of the communities living there. Oil pollution caused by corroded pipelines and crude theft has long plagued the southwestern delta, an impoverished region despite being home to much of Nigeria's oil and gas wealth. Amnesty says the findings of a 30-page report were based on research conducted in the Bobanabe, Bomu Manifold, Baribidom Swamp and Okuloebu areas of Niger Delta's Ogoniland region between July and September this year.
Our investigation finds that Shell has made false claims about the cleanup in these 4 locations. But this isn't simply about these 4 locations. The pollution covers a much wider area. It's not only in Ogoniland, it's not only in River State, but it's in the neighbouring states as well. So we're looking at a fundamental problem here. And again, that's why we're calling on the Nigerian government to look at Shell and to make sure it does, what it should be doing, both in terms of Nigerian law and in terms of international law.
Spills in those areas date back several years. Researchers say they found waterlogged areas with an oily sheen, patches of blackened soil at several locations, and in some cases, pollution spreading into neighboring lands and waterways. Christian Kapande, a resident in Bodo community, says the impact of the oil spills is still devastating.
The water is contaminated, and the pollution is still there. We see breathing benzene, carbon, they're all over. If you get to the waterfront, you will be able to see that this thing has sunk into the mud. It has sunk into the sand. And so it still have great impact on the people.
The human rights organization has called on Shell to change its approach to the way it cleans up after oil spills and urged the government to publish detailed information relating to such operations. A spokesman for Shell's Nigeria unit, Shell Petroleum Development Company, SPDC, said it was difficult to respond to the allegations without having seen the report.
It's upsetting to see the Niger Delta, to go to the Niger Delta, and to see that the pollution is still there. Ken Saro-Wiwa and the Ogoni people campaigned for a cleanup, and that cleanup hasn't happened yet. We and many other people and organizations who are campaigning for this, are calling on the new Nigerian president, Buhari, who, stated on the campaign trail and has stated once again, after he came into office, that he was concerned about the situation in the Niger Delta, that he wanted to clean up Ogoni land in the Niger Delta. We're calling on him to fulfill that promise.
In recent years, Shell has tried to move away from onshore oil projects in Nigeria, which are plagued by industrial-scale theft, security problems and pipeline spills, which have become a growing legal liability. In September, Shell said its future investments in Nigeria would focus on natural gas for domestic consumption and export. Oil pollution and a lack of development had in the past fueled an insurgency by local groups targeting oil facilities that was ended in 2009 with a multi-billion state amnesty program.
Well, that's Network Africa this hour, but before I let you go, I have a question for you. What are your thoughts on the readiness of Africa's standby force to combat insurgency in the continent? What are your thoughts on the readiness of Africa's standby force to combat insurgency in the continent? Send your answers to networkafrica@channelstv.com and find me on Twitter right now at @Josh and let me know what you're thinking. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Josh. I'll see you tomorrow.